Perfect.
Oh, wow.
All righty, and we are live now. So everyone, welcome to our new creative exchange. It's 22nd already, which is super nice to see. Today we're gonna talk about the backcountry, avalanche safety, and all the things that it comes to when to get ready for the snow season. Today we have guest Estelle. Where are you calling from, Estelle?
Hi, I'm calling from my home in BC, Canada.
Nice. I think from all of us here, you have the best snow conditions so far.
Yeah, so far. I'm lucky.
Nice. Then we have Kevin calling from Sweden.
Yeah, calling in from Gothenburg, Sweden. We don't have any snow yet, or we barely get any snow at all in the wintertime anymore. So, yeah, not as lucky as Estelle.
Nice. Then we have Sage, our regular guest, almost already.
Oh, I'm every month in here.
Yeah, your new side hustle almost.
Yep. I
And
called in from Park City. It's nice and brick here. It's cold. We've been getting some snow. Mountains are opening soon, so yeah, I'm really hyped.
nice. And then we have another very special guest today, Henry. Since we thought it would be nice to have someone who is aware of avalanche safety and backcountry stuff to moderate this chat today. So, Henry, maybe a few words about you.
Calling in from Portugal. So probably, I don't know where you are, Tin, but maybe the furthest from the mountains at the moment. Definitely no snow here. People maybe know me as a snowboard MC. I'm predominantly around the contest scene, but I've been a long time backcountry fan. I've spent over 20 years in the mountains in the Alps. Have done numerous backcountry courses. I'm actually going through some qualifications in the background at the moment to do with mountain use. Just very honored to be probably the weakest link in this star-studded lineup. So I'm going to be more the logistics of getting the real juice out of these guys. So thank you for having me.
Nice, perfect. But before we start, we're just going to give it a few more minutes for everyone to join. But for people already on the call, would be amazing to hear from you guys where you are listening to this chat. So let us know into the comments below. And also during the chat, if you have any comments or questions, let us know and we'll make sure to see them and to answer as many as possible. So, all right. Let's see. Bram from Portugal as well, also our monthly user, not user, but viewer.
I know Bram's actually heading out to the mountains for a good few weeks this season, so this is going to be relevant for him.
Oh, nice. Nice. Okay, but I see we are already 50 people, so maybe we can start and I'll give you the mic to you, Henry.
Yeah, thank you, Tin. I guess we can sort of start off going around the assembled legends and talk a bit about their connection with the backcountry, because obviously Sage, Olympic gold medalist, early part of your career, you weren't really necessarily known for too much about the backcountry, and now you're up there with, certainly amongst that kind of pro snowboarder echelon. You're certainly up there amongst the ones who seem to be not just performing in the backcountry, but being a strong voice for backcountry safety and what this whole topic's about. And then Kevin obviously films epic parts in the backcountry with the Beyond Medals, and Estelle is the heir apparent to one of the greatest backcountry venues in the world. And I had heard that she's getting involved with tail guiding quite a lot this year. So some really interesting points of view to come in from. So why don't we start with Sage, the stalwart of the crew? What was your first introduction to backcountry, and how safe were you in the beginning?
Growing up around Utah, there's so much easy access to the backcountry just off of hiking out of lifts or like just split boarding. It's all kind of just right there in the Wasatch. So I think I first got taken out to more like some side country stuff at Brighton. no beacon, no pack, no helmet, 13 years old, hiking out with like just like a pretty rogue crew. And that's when it kind of blew my mind, because I didn't know anything about avalanches or anything like that, or like snow safety or anything. I was like, oh, this is where the goods are. Like, you got to be hitting this more often. And then Utah Avalanche Center came to Park City and like did a thing at one of the schools. And I remember attending that and being like, oh, okay, this is kind of cool. It's good to know about this stuff, because we've been hiking out at Brighton and it's so easy to get around there. It's predominantly a pretty safe spot, just with how the mountains are there. But needless to say, it was something that was kind of like ingrained in my memory, that I was like, I think I just did some like pretty sketchy stuff without having like any knowledge, or like no one was really talking about it. So it was pretty loose first time going to the backcountry.
And how about you, Kevin?
It was pretty much the same. Like, I think I was 12 or 13 first time I went to Italy for like a junior or kids contest, and it was snowing like crazy, and we just, you know, went off the slopes into the backcountry and just lapped for a couple of days. Had no idea about avalanches, nothing. And it wasn't before, I think we were like, when we started filming for Beyond Metals, then that's when I got my first beacon and shovel and probe. But we didn't really know how to use it. But we had one, so we thought it was okay. But yeah, just in the, like, took a couple years before you started, like, learning about it. And wish we had the knowledge from the beginning. But it was,
Loose.
Yeah,
Loose.
so many stories of that,
loose.
people getting to this stage and then being like, wow, looking back. Estelle, you grew up, well, BC, but for those who don't know, of course, inherently attached to the Baldface Lodge.
Yeah, me. I mean, I feel like Kevin and Sage's story is pretty universal. Mine's a little different just because I grew up at Baldface, which is, I mean, a bit unconventional. So I was always with other people that were showing me the way, mentoring me a little bit. But I mean, in the beginning, when I was in the backcountry, I kind of just go around there with my eyes closed, like, yeah, someone else makes the decisions, whatever. And then I think when I was, probably like same 12 or 13, I took a course and was like, damn, it's like, it's serious. You kind of are like, oh yeah, nothing's going to happen. And then you take a course, you're like, okay, time to do some research. And then, from there, I just kind of kept going with the courses, fell in love a little bit. And now I'm hoping to do some shifts guiding this winter at Baldface.
So sick. That's awesome.
Yeah, and it is interesting to say, like you said, like Estelle mentioned, that it's such quite a universal story within snowboarding. Like, people, obviously, you know, the dream is sold. You ride, you do your first pow turn, and you're like, that's all I want to do. Obviously, there's other things, but you're like, that is, if I'm not focusing on double corks or whatever it is people do these days, I'm going to be doing as many pow turns as possible.
Right.
And there is quite different, you know, stories of how people get into or become aware of that safety, which you all highlighted, because, as Estelle said, I feel like from my side, grew up riding dry ski slope in the UK, and so powder was basically the as far away as that as you can get. But there was quite a strong group of UK pros back in the day who had gone through that process of making mistakes and kind of, I mean, there was a big incident and it was all over all the UK media. That was a guy called Steve Bailey had a giant avalanche. Like, he was taking like 5 kilometers down a mountain and like should have died, broke his leg, popped out on top. And I remember that having like a huge like impact in the British scene. And it was a few years after Jamil Khan, the old Burton pro, had died in an avalanche in the States as well. And those two pivotal moments in my sort of formative snowboard years of like, suddenly people were talking about it. And through that in the UK scene, we had a lot of really cool mentors who were like, look, you guys can't, you know, the younger kids come up, you guys can't take this lightly. Like, it's fun, but you've got to do your stuff. And then there was a really strong sort of ethics of people kind of showing you what to do and sort of trying to take people under their wing. Did you guys, I mean, Estelle, obviously you know, you grew up in Baldface surrounded by these kind of people, but like Kevin and Sage, did you guys get any mentorship? Do you have someone who kind of said to you like, look, this is how you do it? Like, maybe you could take a course, or like, let me show you how to use your transceiver at least, or things like that.
I didn't really have it in the beginning. Like, the mountain where I grew up, it's like 500 meters high, never powder, like mostly slushy or just pure ice. So yeah, I didn't really have a mentor there, but once I started traveling, like we started Beyond Metals together. Yeah, me, Tor, and Diggles. So he was like our mentor, like yeah, teaching us the ropes about everything. So yeah, it was good to have older guy, more experience that started teaching us like that we really have to, this is heavy shit if something goes wrong and we need to know stuff about it.
Mhm.
And how about you, Sage? Because I mean, yeah, you mentioned the Utah crew. There's some heavy hitters in that one.
Yeah. I think after, kind of starting to hike out at Brighton and just being around the mix of doing contests at Brighton and Snowbird as well. Yeah, you kind of became familiar with the people that were just going out more. And there was older guys like Bodie Merrill and like Jake Welch and all those guys. You could kind of see that they were starting to film for Absinthe. Absinthe is and was huge in Utah. And so they weren't necessarily taking me out, but we'd see them in the videos. We know what they were doing. We were kind of like talking to them about, like I was talking to Bodie and he's talking about filming for Absinthe, and like going to Alaska and all these things. So you started kind of piecing it together like that. And then, started like got some Avi gear pretty early on. And I got taken out to this jump that's it's a pretty famous jump in the Uintas, not too far from my house actually, on some snowmobiles. And that's when I first, I had a beacon on. We did like a little drill in the parking lot. And I remember just being kind of like petrified actually, because I was like, whoa, I've kind of been riding powder and like hitting some things. And now I'm like, we can die out here. I was kind of like, whoa, I was a little shocked, of how like serious everyone was taking it. So that I was probably 16 years old then. So it was like really early going out, but, seeing people take it really serious of, guys that like to have fun and everything. But when we were out in the parking lot, it was like, hey, this is some serious stuff that we're about to go into. And we want everyone to be safe. And me being 16, I'm like, whoa, this is kind of hectic, and it kind of scared me a little bit before I really dove into like learning more about it, because you live by your own decisions in the backcountry, right? So being afraid of the backcountry isn't good, but being overconfident isn't either. And just kind of learning from that then on that it was like, you need to make your own decisions in the backcountry with your crew. And that's why that day was really just burned in my memory from being with these guys. It was like, okay, this is serious when we go out,
Yeah. And presumably, Estelle, like that was just something that was part of your daily routine, like beacon on, turn it on to transmit as opposed to receive, all these kind of things from a really early age, I'd imagine.
Yeah, I mean, I was going with my parents a bit and always with people that were kind of well-versed in the backcountry. So yeah, I had that kind of ingrained in me, but that was like my mentorship. But there's also like the influence of watching other pros, like watching Sage kind of take it more seriously, and hearing people talk about it even on Instagram is like a super good thing. And because I didn't always think of snowboarding, I kind of thought of it in the beginning like, yeah, jump off a cornice, no transceiver, whatever, like it's so cool. And then seeing other people talk about it was like a really nice step that was like, yeah, it is cool to have safety. It's cool to not like get stuck in an avalanche.
And it's something that maybe people aren't aware of, like especially these days in the world of social media. And I would say to a point, and that's maybe a broader discussion for another time, but there is an element of culpability for people like us who function in the backcountry and are spreading that word, like, because it is amazing. And people maybe see the clip of like, it doesn't even have to be something gnarly like in Alaska, like Sage or Kevin's doing, or even Estelle. It could be just like, the classic GoPro hero shot, the face shots, and you're just like, the sun's out, you blow a pow, and you're just like, that's amazing. People can see that and be like, that's what I want to do. And why wouldn't you? It is the best thing on planet Earth. Mm-hmm. But perhaps like the education behind it is not as broad as it can be. And that's a really good point you said, Estelle. People like Sage out there giving light to these kind of topics and being open about it and like, look, this is the best thing, but it's yin and yang. Like it has the dark side to it. You need to sort of at least make yourself aware of the dangers.
Right. yeah, I think with so much, on social media, it's so easy to just click a video. And it's like, dude, this guy's riding power. This chick's riding this sick slope. And you're like, I want to go do that. And you don't know the steps that goes to take it there. You know, you don't see like the morning ritual. You don't see the beacon check. You don't see the weather report. You don't see the days of being like, hey, this is what we want to go ride. And it's pretty easy to be like, oh, they just went up and shredded that mountain. That was so sick. And I think when I was, I think I was 21 or 22 when I first did Pat Moore and Baldface's risk maturity class. And it's kind of elevated these Avi courses to another level where it's not just an avalanche course. It's a talk about snow science. It's a talk about risk maturity and decision making. And it has a first aid class attached to it. So when I went to that, it kind of blew my mind of like how much you can really know is infinite in the mountains, and like how temperatures and winds and elevations and aspects all change on a daily basis. And I fell so in love with just learning like that because I did like school growing up. I kind of faded out on college a little bit to pursue snowboarding, but it kind of reminded me of like, oh, this is actually, you can be in the classroom and be learning about something that you love, and like how special is that? So it really started intriguing me on how important it is to like share on social media that, hey, we're learning too. We don't know everything, but we're learning this too. You guys should too if you're accessing any sort of backcountry terrain.
Yeah, there's Alejandro Suarez has written a pretty specific question in here about safety of 30-degree incline slopes. I'll handle that a bit later, Alejandro, but I'm gonna just say no slope on the planet is 99% safe. Anytime you're stepping onto the mountain, and it doesn't just have to be in the backcountry, it can be on a run. Like there was incredible, scary footage of entire pistes in Austria that slid last year. Like the actual trails broke off the mountain because of crazy weather fluctuations. So those kind of numbers are something to delve into when you do take avalanche courses, which is going to bring me to my next point. So you've seen the gram, you're out there, you remember the public, you're tuning into this podcast, Creative Exchange. Excuse me. Bram's writing, it could be a podcast. The corner of my eye. You're tuning into this. So obviously you have an interest in backcountry riding, or at least these legends who ride the backcountry here. Let's delve a little bit into possible ways or possible things that people could do to educate themselves, to become more aware. Sort of maybe your personal, there's Bram, that's what put me off. Things from your experience, because amongst the three of you, there's a lot of years of experience and a lot of wisdom there. What would be we'll go around, we'll start with Estelle. Let's go around and ask what your sort of, let's say your top 3 tips for someone who's wanting to, they can already ride. They're wanting to experience the joy of powder riding. What would be your top 3 pieces of advice for someone wanting to get into that? It can be as basic as learn how to lean back on your back foot, because that's how you ride power, unless you've got a rocker and just anything like that. We'll go around. We'll start with Estelle. What would be your 3 top pieces of advice for anyone wanting to get those face shots?
I mean, that's a good question. For the safety perspective, I think that at least in Canada, I don't know how it is where you guys are, but we have the AST1 course. And I would say, like, personally, I probably wouldn't go in the backcountry with somebody that didn't have that course. It's like easy. It's 3 days or something. And I would say, go with people that know just a little bit and know yourself too, and practice with your equipment all the time. Like before, I know Sage was...
Interrupt quickly. AST is avalanche safety training.
Yeah.
And when you say equipment, what is the equipment what's the bare minimum?
I'm just talking about your transceiver, your probe, and your shovel. And if you know how to use it, that's good. But if you train with your friends that you're going to go with, it's even better. Like before I did that course that Sage was talking about, I try to do that every year as like a refresher. But before that, I was like going to a little park in Nelson with my friends that I'm planning to go in the backcountry, and like just making sure our stuff works and that we know what we're doing. And then, I mean, in terms of snowboarding, I don't know who told me this. It's kind of random, but like in the backcountry, you have to land twice. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe it was one of you guys. Like you land and then you bounce up, and then you kind of, because, snow is bouncy there. It's not like a hard packed park landing. You have to land and then you have to land again and then ride away. That was a good tip for me. Yeah.
That's good. That's good. You've got like check out Avalanche safety training courses. That's the bare minimum. Get your equipment, the big three, the probe, the shovel, the transceiver. For those of you who, I mean, we might be dealing with people who have no idea. Like an Avalanche transceiver was invented in 1968 in America, in Buffalo, New York, of all places. It's essentially a radio locator that lets people know where you are. So if you get buried under the snow, hopefully you're riding with people who can find you on the similar devices. So just in case I presume
Yeah, for
knows
sure.
that in case.
And you all have to have one.
Yes.
I've seen people that were like, I have the transceiver, my friend has the probe, my other friend has the shovel. I was like, it doesn't work like that. Just so you know.
I feel like Kevin might have a story like that about Beyond Medals.
Got medals in the backcountry.
Yeah, Kevin, what about you? I mean, any extra ones to add on to that? Anything?
Yeah, pretty much what there, but also like when you start, you can just, go off the slope a little bit, try to ride the POW there. Like, don't go out into the unknown. Like, always be sure where you're going to end up and ride with a friend. Like, and when you start, just, hit the POW next to the slope. That's what I would do. Or that's what I did, but I didn't have a beacon, no probe, no shovel. So always have that, even though the slope.
Sometimes it's the best side power.
Yeah, easy access.
Yeah, there's like,
yeah, that's wicked.
you start tumbling, get stuck. It's not far to hike out. It's good.
Yeah.
And Sage, what about you? Any more to add?
Yeah, I mean, good points covered between Estelle and Kevin there. I think, if you have access to some friends that want to do the same thing, definitely sign up for an Avi course. And like Estelle said, having all the equipment is key, and knowing that stuff is working every year. It's easy to just like set it and forget it, right? Just like leave it in your pack over the summer. But making sure, start of the winter, like right now, I already start thinking about, okay, we're gonna go up to Brighton, and we can, there's a day we can just like bring our stuff up and just run some drills. And those are for people that haven't done classes yet. Those are some things you're gonna learn from doing the course. How to do a beacon drill, how to do a burial, things to look at in the snow. You'll learn all those in the course. So from a safety perspective, that for sure. And always ride with a buddy. In the backcountry, I think it's pretty easy for people to be like, the whole like no friends on a POW day it's a great saying, but it is a loose saying for sure. Friends on a POW day is sick. Sharing it with your friends and coming back home safe is like, you need that every day. So those are from like a safety perspective. And then as far as, kind of like getting into powder riding, if you're new to it, I don't know if I told you that, Estelle. I feel like I didn't, but I am like a firm believer in that. You kind of like land twice, because you kind of like touch down on the snow, and then there's like the reaction to how deep the snow is, how wet it is, how dry it is, how many if there's a crust below. So there's like, it is pretty fun to nerd out on like what type of snow you're landing in. And I think not a bunch of people go into that, but like as soon as the day starts, if we're going out into the backcountry, like I'll touch the snow as we're going along the way. And I'm like, oh, it's super dry. It's 2 feet deep and fluffy today. Like, okay, you're going to sink in super far before you want to put your landing gear down. Or if it's like 6 inches on crust, you're going to be like, I'm going to land like a park jump, So just touching the snow along the way, I think is like such a good indicator. Like you'll start learning that, dude, the snow's super wet today. Like, oh, it's crazy blower. Like, hey, it feels super wind affected. Like just touching the snow along the way, it'll intrigue you on like what type of different snows and with different temperatures and wind and how it affects it. I think it's maybe it's me. I just like doing that, like nerding out.
Yeah, that's good. A visceral experience. But also, I mean, we're touching on quite a lot of safety topics and really cool advice, I think, from Kevin. We've got a comment here from Francisco Maya saying the problem with going on the side of the slopes is that it gets you very fast to understand that you want more, which I think everyone in this chat is basically a junkie for this kind of stuff. But it is, as he says, it's a great way to explore that kind of side of snow sports. And for anyone who is interested in this, there are so many avenues for getting into, in touch with this kind of riding. Like there's so much in the YouTube era. There's so much information online. Xavier Delarue has some great series out there. There's a lot of videos from various avalanche sort of societies around the world, but also on a practical level. Like, let's say, you know, you've got your 1 week a year. In Europe, we have more the kind of week-long holiday crew as opposed to the States. I think people are a lot more like weekend warriors. You know, there's plenty of places that you can get in touch with people who can begin you on this journey. Like mountain guides are a great place to go. You can cruise, and there you go. And the DB page is actually a link to lots of different avalanche courses in lots of different parts of the world. But that's maybe even a step above what you need to do in the beginning. Like if you're heading to France, go into the local snowboard shop and just say like, hey, do you work with any guides? There's an entire industry, especially in Europe. I mean, Estelle over in Baldface and places like that, where there's people who will get you to the good snow and will take care of your safety and will sort of help you to dip your toe in that ocean. Like they will take care of everything. They will give you their tips. Like the mountain guide system around the world, the AMGA, the Canadian mountain guides over in the North American continent, and then the IFMGA, I always get it, UIAMG, whatever it is in France. Like the mountain guides are a resource of knowledge that is amazing, and the prices are pretty reasonable. You know, for a couple of $100, you and your buddy or a group of up to a certain amount can go and ride some epic terrain, and the guides will sort of, you know, give you pointers, but their primary job is keeping you safe. Mm-hmm. So that was kind of how I started. I did a couple of backcountry holidays. Basically, it was like you go out shredding, but you have a guide who's like teaching you on the way.
Yeah, that's a super good way to get into it. Yeah, like you said, like they're there for you to have the most fun, but they're also there to ensure like your safety, and you're going to learn along the way. And then you actually get in touch with so many people that have the same mindset. So you're going to make, if you're kind of lone wolf in your crew that wants to start down this road, or maybe it's you and your friend, you're going to meet more people with a like mindset that want to get some fresh snow.
Yeah, it's great. Like I started my backcountry journey like that, and I'm still riding the backcountry today. There you go, Estelle, your dad's piped in. UIAGM. Thanks, Jeff. I always the IFMGA mountain guides. I always know the one. Marika Weaver, DB legend, chirping in. How do you deal with powder alarm? I think that's it's very specific. I don't know if you have it in the States, but to the Germanic speaking regions of Austria, Germany, Switzerland. So how do you deal with powder alarm, like when it's a sick powder day and everyone is frothing and taking unnecessary risks, which I'm sure this group has experienced, that kind of like absolute over froth. I mean, Brighton in Utah, Sage, I can imagine the gondolas are just full of every row under the sun, just absolutely fit. And yeah, that sort of having, I don't know, screwing your head on the right way on days like that.
Yeah, the powder panic can get real, and it can get really real really fast. I think it's something that we've talked a lot in those risk maturity classes, Estelle, is managing expectations when you're going out and like setting a plan for the day. It's like, hey, it's gonna dump tonight. We know it's gonna be crazy tomorrow. Where do we all want to go shred and have a bunch of fun? And let's go to that plan, right? Instead of just being like, oh, it snowed overnight. Like, let's go. Everyone's here. Like, we need to go get the biggest, baddest run at Snowbird or Mount Baker or this and that. And that's usually when people stop paying attention to what's around them, snow safety wise, and start just being like, okay, the crowd's over there. We need to go over here. And there might be a reason that like no one else is going that way, you know, and you're the only one going there because you're trying to get fresh snow. And I think there's no real recipe for it, but just like having a plan helps so much. You know, like, where do you guys want to go ride? What's the expectation for the day? Are you guys just trying to get resort turns? And if you are trying to hike out, where are you going to try to hike out? Why? And who are you going with? You know, because it's so easy to show up to the mountain and you've got a carload of people. It's like, it's me, it's Henry, it's Estelle, it's KB. We're so hyped. We show up, we see like 10 of our friends, you know, and we're like, oh, okay, let's all go. And all of a sudden you have 11 people. And you might go on a tree run, and especially like up in Canada, you know, tree wells are so prevalent there. You might have 11, 12 people now when you started with 4. You don't know, you get to the bottom and you're like, do we have everyone? And like that's something that, you know, you never want to deal with, is being like, okay, well, where's Henry? He was with, okay, I saw him here, you know, like those things happen so fast. So I think just really sticking to your plan for the day and like who you're with. And if you add more people, or you're going to change that plan to ride a different spot because you're just blown out, really think about those things along the way and like set an example by like going with your plan.
Yeah, great points there. I think, yeah, having a plan for these kind of things, because it is, and it's so hard. Those, like, you just see the power flying, the sun's out, and just like, I'm gonna go. Estelle, from a professional point of view, up in Baldface, you're mentioning you're going to get into some guiding. Baldface, for anyone who doesn't know, hello, come out from under that rock. Quite possibly the premier, or one of the premier powder destinations in the world. I would imagine, I've never been. Have you two? Has everyone at this table except me been?
Yeah.
Yes.
Their first time.
I'm coming one day.
Yeah.
But, and as far as a place like Baldface goes, I can imagine that there is a fairly strict protocol and a fairly, you know, comprehensible structure that goes into powder days, which is basically every day up there. So, I mean, would you mind taking us through a little bit about what a day would look like for, you know, Henry, who's just shown up with his 162 rocker, best board ever, ready to get the turns of his life? But then also from your point of view as a guy, like how you mitigate, you know, potential dangers, and what sort of things are in place for someone to stay safe.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it translates well to the question about people like freaking out and having powder panic. Because the way we do it at Baldface, there's like, first of all, there's a lead guide and a tail guide, and the lead will go down and call up to the group and say, give some instructions, like we're going to go one at a time. We're going to go in partners. We're going to, you know, party shred this run. And then everyone drops in. But usually, especially because Baldface has a lot of tree terrain, is everyone's always riding with a partner. And I think that even on the resort on a powder day, it's important. And if your group changes and stuff, you stick with your partner and you have good communication. And so you're responsible for each other, because you can't be, I mean, in a professional setting, you can, but normally you don't want to have one person being responsible for 10 other people. It's kind of like, well, it's not the way it should be. So on the resort, I would say absolutely have a partner. And then at Baldface, the person in the back doesn't come down until everyone's been accounted for at the bottom. And then they'll call back up on the radio and say, yeah, we're good. We can come down. And yeah, I mean, on the resort, it's good to have eyes on everybody. It's not always possible, but keep track of your group for sure.
Yeah, sort of having points like, you know, before you all just blitz down a run, say like, okay, do you see that point there? We're going to read there.
Yeah, regrouping.
Exactly.
And also riding with a partner doesn't have to suck. Like how we do it is the person in front just like is shouting and hooting and hollering, and the person in the back, or the person in the back is shouting, and the person in the front doesn't have to look back every 5 seconds and see if their buddy's not in a tree well. Because no friends on a powder day is like, no. You don't want to be saying no friends on a powder day when you're like upside down in a tree well, like, yeah, no friends. Cool.
Yeah. I think some of these things we're referring to, for anyone who's sort of on the more like entry level thing, there are certain points that we may be touching on that are of a slightly more advanced nature, but there are filtered down points, like exactly like have a plan, stick to your buddy system, know where you're going, all these kind of things. Like even just as much as like, I mean, I remember the big one growing up was like, don't follow tracks, which of course is like sort of a counterintuitive thing, because you could see this like snowboard ski track going off into like what looks like ultimate terrain, but you have no clue what that person's doing. They could be a ski patroller going to just go and, you know, check. They could be a hunter in Austria. Certainly there's hunters who have like hay on their back for the deer, things like that. Like just little things of like, just because a track goes off, it might be a base jumper who's like skiing off 1,000-foot cliff, you know, things like this, just little points to get in. And I know certainly powder panic, powder alarm, there's a track down here, I'm going full speed, I'm just going to keep following. I've had like 6-hour hike outs of like pretty sketchy stuff, again, without a buddy, just like on my own, and I got away with it. But these kind of things are so easily avoided if you just, and especially in these days with your iPhone, there's so many apps up there that you can use to, oh, that's a picture of my daughter. There's so many resources available for people who are wanting to get into this. there's a really good app, for example, in Austria called Alpenverein Aktiv, which has a topographical layout of the terrain you're in. And to a pinpoint, I mean, I'm going to lament the demise of Fat Maps here. Thanks for that, Strava, because Fat Maps is now gone, and they promised they keep it the same, but they certainly haven't. Like there's apps out there that can at least help you mitigate those circumstances. Like get some of those apps, get at least a resort plan, and see like, does this end? Where does this perfect power end? Any further input on any of those?
Yeah, I mean, just to back you up on just like knowing where you're going is that's huge. Following tracks, you don't know where they're going to go. If you do, good for you. But if you're at a new resort, there's like people are bagging turns over here. I think it's like could be cliffed out. It can get real super fast. You hear just nightmare stories of that happening to people, and some get away with it and some don't. So.
And of course, it's very different, like across in the States and Canada compared to the European experience. In every country as well, you need to familiarize yourself with the rules, because obviously in America, you can get in a whole world of bother, like for ducking ropes and things like that. You can get in a lot of trouble. In Italy, in certain resorts, you can get arrested for going off piste. Most of Europe is pretty cool in the way that it's sort of like, well, you duck this rope,
just assuming your own risk. Yeah,
exactly. Whereas, for someone who's wanting to get into it and wants to slightly, maybe doesn't want to do a guide or something, or wants to be in a slightly safer environment, you have certain areas in the States which are pretty cool because they have gated open terrain where they keep things safe. Sage, you've probably got the most experience, I'd imagine, with places like that.
Yeah. There's we have gates usually in the States, and when you're going out, it's basically like they're kind of looking for you to do all the stuff that we're talking about now. Like you should know the snow, you should know the avalanche hazard for the day, you should know who you're with, where you're going, etc. So basically, when you step out of there, you need to assume those risks. And there is a lot of fun terrain out of those gates. But growing up in Park City here, we have a pretty famous one up at this lift 9990 that's taken a bunch of lives because it accesses this very planar slope with not a lot of support. And it seemed like almost one person a year would always like pass away from an avalanche just exiting that gate. And there's been a lot of talk of closing the gate or having a ski patroller there checking on people if they have beacons or if they have snow safety. And it's kind of this ongoing, there's not a perfect solution for it really, but it's, this gate in Utah is kind of like, you always wonder, like every time it's really, really high Avi danger around holidays, I'll drive around and look, you can see it from the road, it's like it's far out, but you can just see if it slid, and it slides almost like every big storm. And you just hope that no one's over there because it's such an easy way to access. But I think it's good to know that like when you leave the resort, like you need to know what you're doing because you're in a controlled environment in the inbounds, but even inbounds, bad things can happen. They're mitigating as much risk as they can from ski patrol, but at the same time, it's like there are freak accidents where people are like 50 tracks into a slope and the whole thing rips and it's inbounds. Like that happened at Snowbird years ago. And so, nowadays, if it's really deep, I'm going inbounds with my friends. Like I have a light pack on. Like we designed the DB vest for that. I'm like, I'm ripping with my pack just to have it in case, not really I'm assuming my own risk, but also I want to be there to help in any way I can if something else goes wrong. So that's why I do it. Not everyone's like trying to ride with a pack. I get it. But it's just something that I'm like, I'd rather be an asset than a liability.
No, I think there's no excuse with it, especially, like you said, the vests now, they're so light. Like you can have your shovel, your probe, your transceiver, wherever.
And that thing keeps you warm too.
Yeah, 100%. So Moritz Elsenhans has written any advice for Japan, and I mentioned that one now because there's obviously Japan is known as the place with epic, deep, light, dry snow. I think Estelle could argue that maybe in BC they have something to rival that, but certainly for me, the best snow I've ever ridden has been in Japan. But so Moritz, there's certainly from my experience, there's certain areas in Japan which are they're pretty good at mitigating a lot of the risk there. They're pretty strict on where you can and can't go, certainly near the resorts. Some places they'll have like inbound backcountry, and you have to go each season. You have to go and you have to watch like a 15-minute safety video. You have to sign a piece of paper saying, I have this equipment and I know how to use it. And then you basically get an extra armband that you can use for that winter. And when they open those gates, you're allowed to go in. So that's a pretty cool system, I think, for that kind of area. And they keep it closed and wait for it to be safe. And then, I mean, yeah, there's definitely some powder panic there on a good day, because you're sort of in the back of your head, even though it isn't 100% safe, like they've done all the necessary steps to keep it good. And anywhere else in Japan, again, on the DB page, there's a bunch of links to Japanese mountain guides or courses you can do or guides you can connect with. There's some really good people operating in Japan who know the terrain and are going to get you to the good stuff. I know Niseko, for example, you can buy an early bird ticket with a guide. So you go up, like Terje seems to be there every day that the early bird happens. I'm sure he didn't pay for it, but you can go up like an hour before they open the lifts, and you basically, there's a guide with you and you go up. And so like a day in Niseko, you're up there before anyone else. Like, it's pretty special because that mountain gets pounded these days. Who else we got? So the Mountain Network has written in, this is a good one. If you hit the summit and decide not to drop in, what's the safest way out of the situation? Try to hike back down your footsteps. I guess this could split off in different ways, because Sage, you've got a lot of experience with sledding and sort of real, like, deep backcountry stuff. Kevin, I suppose you've done a bunch of that as well, but like maybe more the Japan style. Like, there's a bunch of times you guys are filming in Japan, up in the North Island. What about for you, that situation where you go up and it's like, that's a no-go? What would you think's the sort of safe?
Then or if you have like a zone that you want to ride down, but if you hiked up some like a mellower way to get up there, and if you don't feel comfortable dropping in where you thought it was going to be nice to ride down, just ride down next to your tracks where you hiked up, and just try to get out of there safe. And if you come up to some spot and you don't feel comfortable, never drop in, just kind of take the easy route down, I would say.
Yeah. And it's like, I know it's a bit of a hypothetical question, but in every situation is different of how gnarly the access was up to there if you're hiking, or
if you're ice axing up something.
If you're ice, like it can get pretty complex in that scenario. But I'd say, just always taking the safest route down and having that known going into it. Like, if I get up there and I'm not liking how it looks or how the snow feels, need to have an exit plan before that is really nice. Because if you're up there and you're like, I'm kind of at a crow's nest right now, and I'm like, I don't really have a good way out of this. You should have that established before you go up, if possible. And I think another point to just make with, if you're gonna back off something, is like, we have a really, really strict rule in our crew. If we go out and we're, say, like for us, we're gonna be filming for, like, say, a movie. And if we go out that day and we have this objective, we have this cliff line we want to ride or something, and we get out there and we're super worried about the snow and we back off of that, we do never come back to that at the end of the day after like hitting some mellower stuff and being like, actually, I think we could ride that. It's like, once we step away from something, we're on cruisers the rest of the day. We're like establishing that this is a no-go. Like, we're worried about our safety on this. We're going to go slash and bash some features that we think are safe. We don't come back to that at the end of the day. Like, once you step back, you don't go forward. So we have a really strict rule of that in our crew, because conditions change throughout the day, but your plan should not, if you're gonna back off something, you don't come back to it. So it's just something that we have kind of rooted in our crew, and we have a big group discussion about it. And that's more for filming, but take it.
No, that's advice you can filter down into the everyday thing.
And I think there's always going to be another day to hit it. Like, there will, like, I guarantee it. Like, you can wait days, you can wait weeks, you can wait like a year to hit something. What's more important is like going home and having some food, or having a beer, bowl of soup with your homies or friends or family at the end of the day. So
I think as well, having the sort of the strength of mind can be quite hard as well to say no in situations, especially if you're in a group and everyone's like saying, let's go, and you've got a bad feeling. Like that can be quite a tough sort of to break the peer pressure and say, you know, I'm not going.
A project or something like we're like, we don't get so many good days a year, you know, that conditions line up, and it's hard to back off those ones, but it's nice to back off. And at the end of the day, like, you know, my film Germ's like, I'm so hyped that we backed off. And you're like, dude, that's sick that you're saying that, you know, because we're all here chilling. We can go, like, that thing is gonna, tomorrow's sunny. We got good feel that it's gonna bond way better. Like, we're gonna hit that thing first thing tomorrow, or we're gonna let this snow settle over like the next week or something. We have this on our objective list. Like, it ain't going anywhere. That mountain's been there a long time before we've been here. It's gonna be a long time after. Like, we can hit that thing whenever.
Yeah. So Daniel Anderson's got a couple of things in here, and I'm going to handle his second point first, which is one of the best things I brought with me from an Avi course was a general risk assessment quiz. Knowing how willing you are in general to take risk is a good thing to have in mind before dropping in. And the last Avi course, thank you, Daniel. That's a really good point. The last Avi course I did, we lent quite heavily into the kind of statistics and the concept of risk taking. And I imagine, Estelle, from a professional point of view, up at Baldface, there's some pretty rigid sort of checklist that you guys will have to follow before you take people out onto terrain. Thinking from a, like, obviously that's one end of the scale, you know, you are in a professional environment where you have to say this, we need to tick off this, and this. Would you be able to sort of summarize that and maybe make it into a way that people could adapt, you know, a quick checklist they could have in their head, maybe in the lodge before they go up on a day, or even before a run? What sort of things could they tick off on a practical point of view?
Yeah, it's a good question. I actually saw that in the comments, and I was thinking about it when Sage was speaking as well about your risk versus your reward. And also, I just want to reiterate, like, it's always okay to pull off of something. And if you're in a group where you think that you would be like shamed for pulling out of something that you don't feel safe, that you shouldn't be in that group in the first place. Always have a backup plan, and have a group of friends that will support you, because your gut feeling is really valuable. In terms of your risk assessment quiz, there's kind of like a couple of red flags that you should be aware of. And that would be like any rapid change is kind of a red flag for avalanche. So a rapid change in temperature, especially an increase, like anything that will put more load on the snowpack. And wind is a big one. Seeing signs of avalanches is a huge one. And signs of avalanches isn't just like seeing an avalanche, which obviously that's the biggest sign, but that can be like, as you walk, you see cracks shooting out from around your boots. You see maybe cracks on ridges where cornices are starting to fail. So that stuff is really important. We always say, like, keep your head on a swivel. And a good thing to remember is if snow is falling off the trees, the snow is likely to fall off the mountain. So things that would make snow fall off the trees, it's like warming, wind, all this stuff. New snowfall, huge. Like, if you're starting to see like big pillows falling off of trees, you're like, okay, there's new load on the snowpack, and that should be raising, like, maybe not a red flag, but you should be aware of that in your head for sure.
Yeah, and these are obviously things once you would be imagining you'd be looking if you're, you know, you would have already traveled in the backcountry.
Yeah.
From bringing it back to like a basic point of view, there's so many places that you can get information on the snowpack stability, like avalanche forecasts. They are any resort in Europe, certainly you can go to the lift station and they'll normally have a number. It's
in
a bit
Canada too.
Exactly. Like, you can go.
We'll just check Avalanche Canada. Like, I would say anyone that's watching this, if you live in Canada, at least, I can't speak for the States or Europe or Japan or anything, but always check Avalanche Canada. It will give you a number just like in Europe, and it will give you tips for traveling through the backcountry on that day if you plan to go.
Yeah, and there's apps, there's general avalanche forecasts everywhere, and they will give you a lot of information. The one thing about avalanche forecasts to remember is they can't check every single slope on every single mountain in the world. So they are a general look at the avalanche, the snowpack stability in a big area. So just because an avalanche forecast says it's a 2, that doesn't necessarily mean that slope is a 2. You need to inform yourself you need a bit more knowledge to make that call. Like, oh, the avalanche forecast said 2, it's a go. But, you know, for those of you who don't know, avalanche scale generally goes from a 1, which is considered fairly safe, up to a 5, which is 100% don't go. And yeah, there's every resort will inform you quite often. In Europe, certainly they have a flashing light, which is like there is an avalanche danger. So yellow flashing light. If you see that, it's a warning. Like if you don't know where you're going, this is probably not a day to go in the backcountry. They're the kind of days where if you have a friend who knows the resort, maybe they're going to be someone to say like, hey, it is a bit dangerous, but maybe this area we can get some, like Sage was saying, some nice side slashes off this piece here or things like that. You know, just err on the side of caution, I think, in any of those things. And that leads me into Daniel's other more question rather than statement, which is, do you approach inbounds outside the ropes versus open mountain terrain differently in regards to avalanche safety? He gets the feeling that avalanche safety is taken less seriously when it's close to on a resort. Sage touched a little bit on this before about the idea of sort of safe backcountry riding. But I think the general feeling here is just, you know, if you're going anywhere with fresh snow, aside from maybe that 1 slash right next to the piece that Kevin was talking about, then you need to treat it with respect.
Yeah, I think treating it with respect is a good way to say it, because do I look at it any different? Not really. Like, I mean, it's definitely situational based on terrain and angle and snow conditions that day. But every day that you're trying to access any sort of powder, backcountry, side country, it's like, just take it with respect. And like, it needs that. Yeah.
But might alter your backpack size. Like, for example, you might be riding the vest on a side country day. You're like, well, I have my shovel, my probe, my transceiver, maybe a small medi kit, but you know there's help close by if something does, you know, if someone cuts himself, whatever. Up to the bigger pack that has some food in it, some shelter stuff. Up
right.
To the
you know, like days we'll start riding Brighton, and we're like, hey, we're gonna get the low hanging fruit first. That's just like on the run. It's no 2 feet on the run. Like, I'm smacking that as much as I can before like hiking out. And we have a plan, like, dude, let's mash 3 or 4 runs, and then let's go hit X run that like we know of that we hike to. And that's our plan for the day. We have our pack in the car. We ride like on the actual run, get that pow, and then we all go to the truck. We do our check, and then we're like, all right, now let's go hit that stuff. And that's like our plan for the day, you know? So I think treating it with respect is a good way to put it.
Yeah. Who we got here? Gregor Hangartner. Any tips on ideal group size or minimum group size when going backcountry? Yeah, I mean, we chatted a bit about this earlier. At least a buddy system. No friends on a powder day is the worst saying ever. But there's probably a maximum limit to that at some point. Like, you know, keeping the group, you know, not too big is also a thing. You mentioned that, you know, Sage, you said in Brighton, like sometimes you'd rock up and there'd be like 3 groups of friends just all suddenly riding together. I mean, I know Kevin with the Beyond Medals crew, you guys have been known to roll pretty deep in some backcountry situations. What's your feedback to this?
Like, yeah, but we're kind of always the same crew. We're a big group, but we always, try to keep track of each other. And as Estelle said earlier, what you guys do up at Boldface, like, even if you're a big group, you have one person that you're like kind of riding with. So you, kind of have that connection, even if you're a lot of people.
Yeah.
We used to have a rule of like 4 people, I think was our sort of maybe 5, like ultimate maximum. Other than like the safety sort of margins of being able to control so many people or watch out for so many people, you get more turns. That's the next thing. If you find a cool zone and you're with 4 people, you're going to get a few more runs than if you're with 8 people.
Yeah. I think for us filming, we have like an ideal crew is like, for me, it's like 5 people. It's 2 riders and then like 2 medias and a guide. You know, like that's my dream situation. Like me, I have a buddy to ride with that we can scope terrain or hit a jump together, and then we have, you know, 2 filmers or a filmer photographer, and then we have like a kind of a guide or someone that is acting like a guide that's kind of like they got our back. They might shred too, but they're not really trying to get after it as much. And that's for more of like a film perspective, but just so people know that like when you see like those movies that you like to watch, it's like we're not just busting out there with like 2-3 people. It's pretty rogue. It's like we're trying to have it as dialed as I can. So if anything does go wrong, like I know I look to my left and right, and if something, God forbid, does go wrong, like even if you get an injury, you can knee yourself in the jaw. I'm like, okay, these guys have first responder training that I'm with. I'm going to be good. You know, like they're going to get me out of here. So I think more than like a size, like the people you're with, having, like, I feel safe with these people, or like I'm feeling sketch with these people. Like I don't want to be with these 4 guys. Like they're kind of sketch. So.
Yeah, I think it's something we haven't mentioned perhaps enough yet, is aside from all of the avalanche training, which there's a lot of there's medical concerns as well, like first aid courses, wilderness first responders. There's a lot of backcountry these days, especially. There's a lot of backcountry sort of designed first aid courses. Certainly in Europe, there's guys like Flat Sucks out there who'll do avalanche training with the medical course. I know in the States and Canada, certainly there's kind of more of a structured program that you can follow to become more qualified. In Europe, because of the different countries and different legislations, it's quite hard to get those qualifications. Estelle mentioned AST1, then there's AST2, but there's also on the side of that, there's medical training that comes with it, at least CPR, I think, and then sort of like resuscitation stuff based around hypothermia and things like that. Do you have an overview slightly of, can you talk about the Canadian system briefly, Estelle, like the kind of the steps that people go through on their journey to become personally more qualified, but also perhaps to do more bit what you do with the guiding and things?
Yeah, I think that the AST for sure is a good start. And then you can take you can take any level of first aid that you want. You can take like a 1-day CPR class. You can take maybe like a 3-day, you can take a 40-hour, you can take an 80-hour, you can take your paramedic, like whatever you want. But when you dig someone up from an avalanche, like chances are you're going to have to perform a little bit of first aid. And I think they go through that a little bit in the avalanche courses, but that's kind of like you save someone's life. And then the further you get in your training, the more you learn about other issues. Like your CPR obviously is like life-saving interventions. And then the more you get, you learn hypothermia, you learn like, oh, someone broke their femur. Like there's so much that can go wrong, but to know how to at least save someone's life and make sure their airway is open and their heart is beating, like it's pretty important in an avalanche situation.
Yeah, Sage mentioned kind of the courses that he did with Pat Moore and which he continues to do up at Baldface. So for those of you who don't know, those are, correct me if I am wrong here, they are slightly more geared towards the professional skier, snowboarder, and navigating terrain in the backcountry. Is that correct, Sage? They're kind of slightly more dialed towards what you guys do.
They have been. In Estelle, are they opening up some more, or is that?
Yeah, this year we have the one at Baldface has been going, I think, almost for 10 years, I think. And then this year there's one in Whistler, there's one in Utah. I don't know. There might possibly be more, but
yeah
we're trying to open it up for sure.
Yeah. I think the Instagram for people that want to look at it is called.
I think it's Risk Maturity
Collective. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Going out, and they're gonna be rolling out a lot more stuff in the future for just general public to get awareness and classes too. So
yeah, stay tuned.
Yeah, there are plenty out there for those, because those are, you know, as they slightly more exclusive. People can get on them, but I imagine they fill up pretty fast. But American mountain guides run courses. The Canadian mountain guides run courses. Your British mountain guides. There's some amazing places in the UK. If you're from there, like you can go and do all the training in the Scottish mountains. And even like I mentioned earlier, like if you go somewhere, go into a local snowboard shop and sort of say, hey, is there any courses like this? There's so much information out there. Get educated. You can never have too much education.
In Canada, there's like the Canadian Ski Guide Association, and they run 1-day courses at the beginning of the season at a lot of the different resorts. So if you ask your local ski resort and just email them or something, or even look on their website, I'm sure there will be like a 1-day course you can take at the beginning just to refresh your skills.
Yeah, and a lot of resorts have transceiver gardens where they have like a grid where they bury different transceivers, and you can just go and activate it. You can ask them to turn it on, and you can go and practice with your staff. And we always used to do training in the garden with the trans. So once you've got, so for those of you who are interested, once you've done your avalanche course and you're taught how to use your equipment, you have to get out and practice. And we used to like make games of it. You know, the winner gets a schnapps or something. You know, like. loser has to do the next round in their underwear or something. Like it can be fun, you know, and taking the sort of the gravity out of the situation sometimes can make it a bit better, because those skills, they become rusty. It's like a knife. You got to keep it sharp. You need those things to be automatic. Quickly now, Raw has written, not sure if it was asked already, but do you feel that the current changing climate, there's more uncertainty in the uncertainty of the actual conditions of the terrain? This is this is probably a topic for another a whole other broadcast, and I'm acutely aware that we're approaching 1 hour. We'll keep going for just a little bit. Have you guys experienced stuff like that? I imagine, Estelle, growing up in BC, you've seen a few years of different conditions. Certainly for me in mainland Europe, the last 2 winter cycles in Austria were some of the strangest cycles of snow conditions we've ever seen. We went from minus 20 degrees centigrade to +9 regularly. Like, you get a dump, it would be freezing. The snow would fall, you'd get like half a day of good snow, and then it would just slide down to the ground through massive temperature fluctuations, which are critical for snowpacks. Any personal experiences from that, guys?
I think the answer to the question is for sure. Like, kind of back to what I was saying earlier, like, big changes are problematic. And in this climate now, where weather patterns are getting more extreme, temperature fluctuations are more intense, definitely more, uncertainty is the right word for sure.
Yeah. And Kevin, for you out filming, you see, certain spots that used to be like, that's always a go. Like, are they, the spots disappearing in these tricky times?
Yeah, for sure. Like you said, we've been filming a lot in Austria as well. And like the conditions there the past couple of years has been, really strange. From, the weather, like it's warm, it's cold, it's snowing. Like, we've seen a lot of changes here in Europe for sure the past couple of years.
Yeah. And so, Sage, was it last season I thought I saw, or I'd heard rumors that you had trips to Japan booked, and then you were like, I'm not leaving home. It's like the best winter I've ever seen. Was it last year or the year before? I can't remember.
Yeah, the year before. Yeah, it was. Yeah, some stuff like that. Where it was like a record-breaking year. Where like had everything booked to Japan, and it was so crazy in Utah. It was like Japan was here. It was snowing. It was like coastal dumps were happening in Utah. And so, I think just uncertainty in that, there's like, it is change. Like, you don't really know what to expect every year. We could have like the biggest year ever, and then like a super big drought. So just staying in tune with where you want to go, I think is really key. Like, I think, about 2 weeks ago, I basically started just like, I got my websites, I got my apps, I got my, my people that I watch in different locations that I want to ride throughout the winter. And I'm texting those people. I'm being up to date with snow conditions in like Revelstoke, Wyoming, Idaho, Alaska, Whistler, Europe, Japan. I kind of just, that's a lot, but that's just like, that's where I want to ride this year. And that's where we're like, so, I'm just keeping tabs on that. I'm like, okay, has there been any crazy spikes in Revelstoke? And I'm texting Dustin Craven up there. Just getting observations of where you want to go, I think is key, because you don't know if you're going to deal with those, like, okay, it dumped and then went up to +10 centigrade, or like, you don't know what's going on if you don't know what's going on.
Yeah. Katie Moore has written in she's just actually given us some information about this in Chamonix in France, one of the meccas of backcountry riding. We'll probably maybe get that copied and put onto the information page about backcountry stuff in Chamonix. Yeah, probably arguably the best place to ride backcountry on the planet, but incredibly scary. I'm acutely aware now, guys, we are running slightly over an hour. I could sit here and chat to you guys for hours more about a topic which, we've just dipped the tiniest little piece of a tiny toenail in here. Some amazing anecdotes from you guys, some great information, which I hope the public can gain some information, and also a curiosity in learning, because it is, as I said earlier, you can never have too much education out there in the backcountry. I think if we maybe we go around and sum up, just like you give one final point, what people should do if they're wanting to get out there. I'm gonna, or maybe we do two or something. From my point of view, I'll start it off, and I'll say, yeah, I would get in contact with a guide. Would be my thing. If you wanted to get in contact, get a guide, a qualified one. Make sure they've got the proper qualifications, because there are some rogue units out there claiming to be guides, and some countries don't have proper legislation. Make sure they're either in Austria ski Führer, or they're an IFMGA UI AGM guide, and they'll take you to the good stuff, and then that might start you on your journey. Estelle, what would you add?
I would say my takeaways would be know before you go, your equipment, the conditions, and make sure your friends know before you go too. It's okay to be selective with who you go into the backcountry with.
Yeah, brilliant. Kevin?
Yeah, pretty much the same as Estelle. Like, always check the avalanche report. Like, go riding with a buddy. Yeah, check your gear. Like, check your buddy's beacon before you go out. Just make sure everything is working, and don't go down a run where you don't know where you're going to end up.
Brilliant. Sage?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, knowledge is powder. So the more you know, the more you know how to access it and where to go and where to not go. And we'll just leave it there.
Yeah, brilliant. And for those of you, equipment wise, there's some amazing DB products out there. They've got some new backcountry bags dropping this year. Check out the website. The Breathe system, which I've got queued up here. Let me get the name right.
Yep.
That vest is amazing. Feels so like when you're riding, it's so like feels like you don't have anything on. So connected.
Yeah. It's an award-winning new system. It's actually something that I'm going to keep talking now, because this is actually something that I meant to talk about earlier. It's a system that I'm not familiar with. It's essentially a way of pulling oxygen out of the snow if you do get buried. And it was an ISPO award winner a few years ago. So it's, new technology. And obviously in the last years, there you go. There's a link to the safe back there. The system seems really exciting. There's obviously airbags out there, but don't forget airbags. The research is in. They are amazing. They are saving lives, but they are no replacement for knowledge and practice. An airbag is an absolute last resort. Would we agree with that?
Yeah, and using airbags in you can get into nuances of this one, but using airbags in the right terrain is definitely something that you can learn with just knowing your terrain. But I think that safe back, I think they did studies with up to 90 minutes of air. If you have an air pocket, which is just huge. It's another great tool in your belt. I think all these things that we've been through today, I think I'll leave it on this one actually this time, is like all of these are tools to have in your tool belt. Having a beacon is not going to save your life if you don't know how to use it. And also looking at a beacon is like, that's something I want to use last. Like, I don't want to use my beacon. I don't want to go search for my friend. Like, let's make the decisions to not do that. I don't want to hit my friend with a probe. Like, let's make decisions so we don't end up there, So I think looking at all these things that we've talked about in the last hour and some change as just other tools you can use, and having a daily habit of like waking up, check the weather, check the snow report, check your avalanche forecast center, hit up your friends. What do you guys want to ride? Like, get in the groove of that. Check your beacons. Go through all these things, the same thing every time. They'll become like second nature, and you'll feel way better about your decisions.
I don't think I can sum it up better than that. Just quickly, Safe Back, you can check out their website as well. They have loads of information on that system. There you go.
It's really lightweight.
Yeah, brilliant. Sage, I think that's the ultimate sum up there. So I think we're going to use this opportunity to say thank you so much for everybody for tuning in, getting the discussion going.
Thank you.
Amazing questions from the crew out there, some great information. There's some notes out there as well. So you can go and check out. There's a lot of information on connections to guides or avalanche safety programs, things like that. But I hope you all have a safe winter, guys, girls. Estelle, thank you very much for joining us from BC. May the snow keep falling. Hope you have a great time. Kevin, good luck. I think you're probably going to have more trouble surviving the Beyond Medals film premiere tour than the snow this season.
Yeah, I think so too. We're going in for a heavy one, but hopefully we'll survive that one.
Sage, yeah, hope the winter starts soon for you. And everyone out there in DB Wonderland, thank you so much for tuning in, and tune in for the next creative. Next
I'll be there again.
Sage will be there. Thanks so much, everyone, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Not sure how.